Everyone, welcome to Iridescent Colors. I'm Kevin Greeland, and today we're going to take a quick look at our 5 lines of paint. So if we go ahead and switch to the overhead, here we have them all laid out in the same color. We have our heavy body, and that's the one that most folks are probably familiar with in the white traditional tube, also available in larger sizes jars. Next up is our open, and it comes in this black tube. The open is designed for a longer working time. And our fluid, that's this one here. And then we have our high flow, sometimes referred to as an acrylic ink. And then our newest paint line, So Flat, which is a line of matte acrylics. So we're going to go through these one by one and take a closer look at those. If you have questions, remember you can always check out more information on our website, and if you can't find your answers there, you can also email us at help@goldenpaints.com. So let's take a look first at our heavy body. So heavy body was our first paint line that we put out. This happens to be our Diox purple, and you can see it almost looks black there. I'll use a palette knife and spread some of this out. The heavy body is known for retaining its brush stroke or its palette knife work. It's great if you like a lot of texture. And let me just add a damp brush to this so I can pull out that really beautiful purple color. So that's our Diox purple in heavy body, and known to hold its brush strokes. If we look at the dried sample here, you can see all of that brush stroke, brush mark, and the same with the palette knife. All right. The traditional acrylics dry pretty quickly in the studio, depending on your location. Everybody always asks how long, and that's really relative to your environment, what you're painting on, airflow, and etc. But if you want an extended working time, you could consider our open. That's the one in the black tube. So let's switch out. We'll do some comparisons here. This is our heavy body in a teal and our fluid teal. So the misconception is that we just take our heavy body and add a lot of water to it to make the fluid, and that's not the case. The differences in the viscosity has to do with the polymer that we're using. So this is the fluid, and if I hold those up, you can see that the fluid has much greater movement than the heavy body. The fluid, just like the heavy body, will retain some brush strokes. So if I work this with the palette knife, you can see those marks as this dries will stay there. With the fluid, it does hold some marks, but it's not quite as evident as the heavy body. So again, if you're the kind of person that really wants a lot of texture, stick with the heavy body. If you want something with a little less texture, consider the fluid. So both have the same amount of pigment, the fluid and the heavy body. This is our fluid manganese blue. Again, as I said, it retains some brush strokes. And you can tell on all of the containers, we put all of these black bars, and that black bar is to give you an indication of the transparency or opacity of the color. So if we take a look at the Diox purple, it's really hard to see those black bars, partly because of the color, but also because of transparency. If we look at something like the naphtha red light compared to the manganese blue hue, you can see a little less. So that's another indicator for you about the color that's in there. So the fluid, less texture. One of the things you can do with fluid is take advantage of that consistency and do some very fluid paintings. All right, so we're going to switch out and take a look now at our open. And remember, the open is the one that's in the black barreled tube. That's this. So we'll squeeze a little bit of these out. This is the open, again, designed to stay wet. for an extended period of time. That extended period of time is dependent on the environment, wind flow, what are you painting on. But if you're a plein air painter and you want to paint outdoors and the acrylics are drying too quickly for you, consider the heavy body drying too quickly for you, consider the open. The other thing that I should mention is all of these can be mixed. So we're using the open, this is the ultramarine blue, and here I'm going to use a little bit of our benzimidazolone yellow medium. And you can see the heavy body, lots of brush stroke or texture can be retained there. If I do the same to the open, I can keep a lot of that same texture. The open is just a little bit softer. If I take a little bit of both and move them over here, I can mix those. And nothing's really going to happen to the paint itself. I'm just going to change the drying time. So if this yellow would take maybe 20 minutes to dry in the studio, this blue, the open, could take an hour or an hour and a half to dry. Another thing with the open is it's great to use in palettes because you can carry that paint over from one painting session to the next. We'll look at kind of the dry version of this. Here I have the same benzimidazolone yellow in a traditional heavy body acrylic, and then I have the slow drying ultramarine blue here, and I've done a 1-to-1 ratio mix. If I drag my finger across there, you can see that, well, the heavy body was wet, the mixture was also wet, and the open ultramarine blue was still wet at 15 minutes. So I could drag across, and all three were wet in the studio. Within 30 minutes, the heavy body was very dry. The mixture, the 1-to-1, was movable, and I could drag some color across there, and the open was wet after 30 minutes. Going down even further to 1 hour, 60 minutes, I could mark the surface a little bit on that mixture, but the open by itself still fairly wet, and even down to 90 minutes, you can see the open is wet and the mixture was dry at that point. So depending on what you want to achieve with your painting, the open might be ideal for you if you're painting outdoors or if you want to do some printmaking. The nice thing about the open is that it can stay wet for a while on printing plates. So this is an example using a gel plate. We'll be talking about this next month in more detail, but open is great for printmaking as well. All right, let's switch those out. And we'll take a look at our high flow colors. So one thing you'll notice, the difference between the fluid and the high flow is the high flow has this nozzle applicator at the top. The fluid does not. In terms of comparing the viscosity, let me get some paper towels here because this can get a little messy. This is our traditional fluid, as I said, and then we're going to use a little bit of the high flow. And the one thing that you'll notice when I'm shaking this is you'll hear there's a little ball in there, and that's to help agitate the paint. Unlike the fluids, which traditionally we don't have to shake, the high flow, you will want to do that. The high flow is great for a lot of purposes. Again, I said some people refer to it as an acrylic ink. But in terms of viscosity, you can really see how fast that high flow runs to the bottom compared to the fluid. So the high flow is great for airbrush applications. It can be used in refillable calligraphy pens. We have some examples here using our iridescence high flows in a calligraphy pen to do the writing, and then here staining of wood can be used kind of like a watercolor. You can use it in water media applications. The main difference is that once dry, this is an acrylic, so it can't be relifted. And it's also useful for fabric applications. You can find a number of empty markers. These come in all variety of sizes and shapes. Again, look for ones that have those little balls in there to agitate the paint. Here is a smaller one. And there are some that even have needlepoint application. is a very fine needle. This one I've filled with our high flow fluorescent orange. And so you can see you can get some really fine line work with this using those in empty markers. Again, a number of different brands are available. This is a larger size graffiti marker. These paints have been in both here for at least 2 months now, and you can see they're fairly wet, and I haven't really cleaned them very well, but they stay wet for quite a while, and you can use them to mix. So that is our high flow airbrush and markers, water media effects. Then the next one will be our new line of paint, our So Flat. So Flat is new. This is a color chart. This is an acrylic that's designed to be nice and matte in finish and fairly self-leveling. Can do a little comparison here. This is the cad orange painted here, and then I used our quin magenta painted here, and I just wanted to kind of quick show you. If I tilt this in the light a little bit and have that light rake over that surface, you can see that this fluid is fairly glossy compared to the cad orange So Flat, which is very flat. And then I've just done a greater mixing of the fluid quin magenta with the cad orange, and you can see just that like 25% is fairly flat, but as I move up that scale, it starts to get glossy again here on the bottom. And you can see that gloss. Again, fairly new, and we have a color chart to go along with that. Within the lines of paint, we also have another series of paints that we refer to as kind of our specialty paints, and those are our iridescent colors. The iridescent colors come in a fairly large variety. They're available in different formats, both fluid, heavy body, and high flow, and even open. And you can see a number of different color options. And then we also have our larger micas. So we have a gold mica, we have a pearl mica, black mica, and coarse alumina. And just as a reminder, all of those colors can be mixed with our fluids or heavy body or even our high flow. In this case, we've taken all of these colors and we've mixed them with the quin magenta in the high flow. So let's take a look at a few of these. I'll move these out of the way. And we'll take a look at two of these now, micaceous iron oxide, which is hematite ore, and our stainless steel. So these, out of the specialty paints, these are the two that we can kind of consider or say that the pigments are real, in that this is hematite ore. And if I spread that out, you can see it kind of has a little bit of a grit to it. And when that dries, it's great as a drawing ground. It can be mixed with other colors, and you get a huge array. The other is the stainless steel, and like the micaceous iron oxide, this is real particles of stainless steel. And I'll brush some of that out. Again, in the heavy body format, you can see this will retain whatever texture you painted out in. This is the stainless steel, and it has real particles of stainless steel. Micaceous iron oxide has the hematite ore in it, and this is in the heavy body format as well. If you have any questions about any of these, you can go to our website and check those out, or you can put the questions in the chat. We have somebody in the chat, a material application specialist, answering your questions. So we're going to take a look at our other iridescent color. This is the bronze. And what makes the bronze unique is the other iridescents are all kind of single pigment. This actually, we have two agents. This is both the fluid and the heavy body. And if you add some water to this, you get the phthalo green to start to leach out of that. And I'll put just a little bit here. And if we just give that a minute, hopefully you can start to see that phthalo green. So with the bronze, it's a good way of kind of using it and creating an instant patina at the same time. Again, a lot of these iridescents are available across all 4 lines of heavy body, fluid, and high flow and open. Not all, but most. Another line of paint to look at is our iridescents, or excuse me, our interference. So our interference colors come in a variety of colors. You'll see it says fluid acrylics on the top. These are also available in heavy body, and the color is listed there. For the most part, they all look kind of white or transparent, and we'll get into that reason in a few minutes. But here's an assortment of those colors swatched out. So by themselves, they look fairly pale, but when they're over a black surface, they get much brighter. And or if you drop a little bit of black into those. They also, in the light, tend to reflect their opposite color. So let's go ahead and mix some of those up so you can see that. This is the interference colors. And we're going to start with the interference violet. You can see if I put that on the white, and I just spread that around, it kind of looks a little bit like a very faint green, and you don't really see that violet at all. But if I put that on a black surface and spread it out, you can really start to see that violet in there. This also can be enhanced by mixing in with other colors. So we'll mix in a little bit of green gold with the interference violet. Then, you know, traditionally if you kind of mixed a green and a purple or violet color, you'd wind up with kind of a muddy color. Well, here you can see mixing in that interference violet just changes the green a little bit, but that violet is not present until I put it on this black surface. And then you can start to see that violet popping through that green. With the interference color, you can also add a little bit of black to it. So we're going to put the interference violet right there. And I'm going to put in 1 or 2 small drops of carbon black. And we'll give that a mix. Need to clean my palette knife. And so you can see that purple color really starting to come through again. So either on a dark surface, if I pull this one down, on a dark surface you can put the interference color, and as that dries, it'll get more violet. The thing with acrylics is they're always kind of a milky color until they dry. That polymer takes a few minutes to clarify. You can also add a little bit of black, and then you can really see that violet in there. And true, when you mix it with another color, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. You can see on this one that violet is there. So that's our interference colors. Again, available in a number of different colors. We also have them in what we call a CT, a color transfer. So this one is a green violet, a green orange, and a green blue. If I hold those in the light here, you can kind of see the color shift a little bit. And again, if you have any questions about these, you can always email us at help@goldenpaints. Check out the website. And we have a number of great articles on justpaint.org. A couple of other things to point out. We also have a group of light value colors, so we just thought these were more convenient in this format for you without having to mix. If you've ever tried to mix down a light phthalo color or mix down a phthalo color, you'll know. So we have a few of these in a light format. And then we have some fluorescents, best seen under a black light. But you can see here they are by themselves and then on top of a black. In addition to the fluorescents, we also have a phosphorescent green color. So a selection of those. And then last, kind of determine which color you would want to use or which paint line you'd want to use for which particular application. We can kind of demonstrate this. I have a dry and wet. So we're just doing this on crackle paste. And let me get the blue. We're using ultramarine blue here. So which one you might choose is kind of dependent on how much texture you might want, how little texture you want, or maybe what you're painting on. So in terms of the heavy body, we'll brush that one out first. Just going to put some down here on top of the crackle paste and brush that out. So the heavy body on the crackle paste, you can see it's very thick, so almost instantly it starts to conceal and cover up those cracks. So if I wanted to really emphasize that, I could use a little bit of water to thin that down, but because of its consistency, you can see that it conceals all the cracks. And you can see that in this dry format here as well. An open will be very much similar to that as well. We'll put out some open. Open's a little softer than the heavy body, and remember, again, it has a longer working time, so it will stay wet for a little bit of time. But again, if I brush that out, you can see how quickly it starts to fill in all those cracks on the crackle paste. The next one would be our fluid. We'll brush that one out. And so you see the fluid starts to emphasize the cracks rather than fill them in. And if I add just a little bit of water, you can see those cracks. The next one we'll do is our high flow. Remember, this one has the bead in to shake. If I spread that out, you can see I can water that down, treat it like a watercolor almost, but it starts to really emphasize the cracks. And again, if we take a look at the dry version, you can see the heavy body pretty much fills them in, as well the open does. The fluid to some extent, but you can see the high flow really kind of highlights the ground that I'm painting on. So in terms of which one you would want to use, really kind of dictates maybe what surface you're painting on and how much texture you want. And then let's take a look at our newest color, and that's our newest line of paint. That would be our So Flat. And you can see this one is fairly thick like the heavy body. I can water this down a little bit, but you see it really does kind of fill in those cracks. So again, if you were working on the crackle paste or you really wanted that texture to show, you'd probably go with a fluid or a high flow. If you wanted a lot of texture and brushwork to show, maybe you would choose the heavy body or the open. If you wanted a really matte and flat surface, then you could go with the So Flat. Again, if you look at it in the dry version, you can see which ones emphasize the crackle paste and which ones covered it up. So in terms of which choice you want to make or which color really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Let me move these out of the way. I'll slide these in. So then if the next question is like, gee, I'm not sure which one I want, you can try, we have several different sets. So this is the new So Flat in the Zing set. And we just did a quick swatch out. These are all the colors mixed with themselves. So this would give you a quick snapshot of the So Flat in terms of both its brush and texture and its color, if you'd like that one. If you think that you're more inclined to try the fluid sets, we have a fluid set. It's titled the 8 Professional Fluid Acrylics. So you can see they're much smaller sizes, so you don't have to invest in buying a larger size. You can try these sets and figure out which one you like best. Again, this one comes with 2 whites, titanium, and zinc. Again, we've mixed them all out with each other just to give you a variety of the color. So that's the fluid set. And then if you think you might want a lot of texture, or you just like working with traditional acrylic in the tube, we have this. This is the color mixing modern theory set. Again, you can see the variety of colors that you get by mixing those with themselves. So this is the heavy body set. And we'll take a look at one more. This is the landscape set. So if you were interested in the open, either for painting or to do printmaking, this is the landscape set. You can see you get smaller tubes, you get a little bit of open thinner, which we've not talked about, and you do get a large tube of titanium white. Again, a huge variety of color just by mixing them with themselves. We did a wash kind of on the top and then mass tone there on the bottom. So that's the open landscape set. Well, let's go ahead and recap and then see if we have any questions. So we make our 5 lines of paint. We have our traditional heavy body, shows a lot of brush stroke. Our open, little less brush stroke, close in comparison to the heavy body, but not quite the same. It's a little bit softer, a little bit slicker. It comes in this black tube with a black cap compared to the heavy body. Again, both of these are available in larger sizes in jars. And then we have our fluid acrylics, kind of the consistency of heavy cream, so you can see here by the run. And then we have our high flow. This is the one that can be used in refillable markers or airbrush. You can also treat it just like a paint and use it for painting. Remember the board that we showed you where it was painted on wood. And then our last one is the Naphthol Red Light. This is the newest line of paint, and it's the So Flat. And the So Flat, we do have a new color chart for that. So 5 lines of paint, the same colors, and you can see the contrast there in texture and a little bit of the color shift there in the So Flat. So hopefully that's kind of answered the basic questions. Our 5 lines of paint, heavy body, open, fluid, high flow, and So Flat. Again, if you have questions, check out our website, or you can email us at help@goldenpaints. I hope that's helped. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again.